of years, so the account's kind of been vacant for a while, saying, "Hey, click on this link. Glad to send this to you. You really got to check this out." Clearly, that's phishing. But how do they do that with someone else's account? Do they hack that person's account and then send you that stuff? Is that what happens,
sometimes.
Ken?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing a lot of is that it's the username and password. So a lot of the compromises of Yahoo accounts and Google Mail and stuff like that are because people have weak passwords. Once a person gets into those, they're using those email, and then they're looking through the contacts, and then they're sending additional emails to those contacts. So trusted, if you will, phishing attacks through that method.
And what they're getting out of this, again, is depending on what happens, when I click on that stuff, they're going to get information to get into. They want to get into my wallet. Is that basically what it is, or is there other purposes that they're
I mean, they want to expand the network of individuals that they can touch through a trusted chain. So if I can go to Cheryl, I'm more of a trusted individual for her. Now, what she does and what information, one of it could be is even her active email still registered. And if it is, then another attack would go and pursue. So especially when like LinkedIn got hacked, we found a lot of emails coming around off the database of LinkedIn that people were then getting solicited to. It looked like LinkedIn. They had information. So it's that trusted network that we're talking about with the social engineering that they're
So
really
it can be
exploiting.
information, but it also can just be, like, there can be just little pieces of code that go hang in your computer for a while, and then they build themselves into big bad things that are going to be harvesting your passwords or looking for your banking information.
Interesting you mentioned LinkedIn, because the social media sites have often been the targets of attacks, and there was one in the second quarter of this year that was claiming responsibility with something called the Syrian Electronic Army. They hacked into the Twitter account of the Associated Press. The way they did that was by sending these phishing messages to people that work for the Associated Press saying, click on this thing. And they eventually got to the Twitter sign-in page, got the login credentials, and were able to put on AP a fake breaking news story. It said 2 explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured. Now, you would think that's just somebody up to no good and it's just funny, but the Dow dropped 145 points when that story was carried by AP, a trusted source, which then went further. So sometimes what looks like a practical joke is a lot more than that.
That's right. Yeah, and you have the cyber rumors, as I call them, have always been around. And anytime you get that and you can fake that information, as you just alluded to, I mean, that's financial money that could be at harm. So it's no longer, we're doing it just to see if we can do it. There's some political motives to it, and there's other financial motives to it.
Okay, so Jim is still with us. Jim, delete all of those emails, and then is there one other piece of advice, Greg, or Ken, that you should give to Jim as he continues to suffer this barrage of phishing messages?
I think, unfortunately, with the way the internet is and with the way emails are, it's just something you kind of have to suffer through. Just be mindful of the emails that you open and mindful of the links that you click on.
All right. Thanks so much for the call, Jim. Hope we helped you out a little bit there. Sorry about your frustration. All righty. And Steve is joining us now. Steve is in the city of Cleveland. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My question is, with all the financial institutions pushing you towards mobile apps to use on your cell phone and smartphones that kind of flip-flop between public Wi-Fi networks and the cell phone network, are we opening ourselves up to a whole other kettle of fish if we're using apps on our smartphones as opposed to using the website from our home computers?
And there's so many more access points, obviously, because we're walking around with that information, sometimes turned on with the Wi-Fi on and the Bluetooth, which are all avenues inside that information. Who wants to take that question? Eric?
Sure. Certainly it's a significant risk. The phones don't have quite as a mature security model as the computers and other devices that are out there, and it's a fresh zone for attackers to try to get your information.
That's not very reassuring, Eric.
I know it isn't. Unfortunately, we have to be the proclaimers of some bad news.
Do any of you use mobile phones for payments at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's society as a whole. I mean, we want fast and we want it now. So the banking industry is just staying competitive. So they're trying to get the check by phone where you can take pictures of it, mobile wire transfers. I mean, all of this is so that we as consumers could have our information. We could be at Starbucks. We could be wherever, pick up the Wi-Fi and do our shopping, do our online bills and whatnot. So we're doing that as a society We just have to know there's risks that come with that. And if you understand the risk and you accept them, then just be ready when that happens.
So
There's
how
the
do you
balance.
weigh the risks, though?
Right.
Whenever you're going to use your mobile phone for a payment,
Right.
like how do you weigh the risks, you personally?
Well, I mean, especially if when I use it, I do, ACH or I do wire transfers and whatnot. So the way that I have it set up is that two-factor authentication where you have a token and you have a password. So it's something you have and something you know. So I've weighed the risk of I need this on demand, especially when I travel, and I've put in security controls in place that would prevent a potential malicious attack. And that's really something that small businesses, you guys talked about. These small businesses, 30 million, 40 million, could have 1.5, 2 million in the bank for payroll. And at the end of the month, if a hacker got in there, I mean, that could really do damage to a small business. So really looking at making sure that your ACH and wire transfers are secure with a two-factor PIN. All the banks that do business with small businesses have that capability, and very few small businesses take advantage of it. So that's something that's very helpful that people should really start looking at, especially for small businesses.
Which leads to a broader question. There have been some folks who have been pushing for a federal solution, a rule, a new standards for this kind of security, and there have been a whole lot of companies that are pushing against it. They say, we have our security consultants, we're doing it on our own, we don't want to have any standards imposed on us. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that, Greg, about the idea that there should be some standard for the kind of protection there is for this information.
I think you try and let industry and innovation set those standards instead of trying to regulate it on a government level. There is a thought that the government is there to kind of protect individuals, but when you're talking about a technology that's fast moving and that it's constantly changing, you need to have those individuals that have their feet on the ground, the people working for the companies, working in security. Those are the people that need to be looking at setting the standards, creating the standards, and protecting the information.
But you could have some sort of floor instead of a ceiling, like a floor, like baseline. Here's what, if you have this, you are required to protect it. You can be fined X for revealing it. You could have that kind of a...
Are you talking about a floor that says you have to have basic security, or what you mentioned there secondly was if you let the information out, then you can be fined? Because those are kind of two different things. There's setting some standards as to how the information should be protected, but then there's just saying, we'll let you protect the information how best you see fit, but if you don't do it correctly, then you're going to be in trouble. And I think the latter is probably a better situation than the former.
Government moves slow.
It's just not working, though. I mean, the problem is it's not working. I mean, we're desensitized to the fact that we keep getting these letters, every day, where we used to get them and you were like, what am I going to do? Now you just file them with the other ones you already have. So, I mean, with organizations that are $1 billion, we're seeing that most of them don't even have a chief information security officer or someone who's in charge or has authority to go into the board and say, we have security issues. So, I mean, it's a systemic issue, and I don't think by letting the organizations as a whole just continue to use our information, especially in this hyper-localization of marketing, that they're going to do the right thing, and if not, slap with fines. I mean, I've heard organizations say, what's the fine? How much does it take to secure it? We'll play the risk odds. And I just think it's something in the future the security community is going to have to look at. And I'm backing the fact that we need a little help, because I've been in it for 16 years, and I can tell you, I mean, we're not getting much better.
We're going to take a quick break right here. We'll go into it with an email from Bill in Cleveland. He says, as for one of your panelists saying that the U.S. government's FTC is, quote, taking action, well, many of those actions are lame. Consider, for example, what the FTC did to HTC, whose Android phone enabled such hacks. HTC had to promise not to let it happen again. That's Bill's thought from Cleveland. Perhaps these sanctions are not tough enough. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and continue with our conversation, talk a little bit more about the Chinese cyber war machine, and answer your questions as well. Becky from Solon is on the line, and we'll be talking with you right after this break, and with you as well. 216-578-0903 is the number to get through. It's the Sound of Ideas. I'm Mike McIntyre, and we're back in a minute.
John Carroll University presents Continuing the Dream, Hope and Peace in Word and Song, featuring Reverend Dr. Otis Moss and the Greater Cleveland Choral Chapter on November 7th at 7 p.m. in the Dolan Science Center. Details at jcu.edu.
Support for 90.3 comes from Delta Dental. Dentists can detect signs and symptoms of more than 120 diseases just by examining the mouth, head, and neck. More information about a healthy mouth, healthy body is at deltadentaloh.com/disease detectives.
Cleveland Playhouse continues its vibrant new season with the alluring and seductive comedy Venus in Fur, directed by CPH Artistic Director Laura Kepley, playing November 1st through the 24th in the new Second Stage. This electrifying and sexy Broadway hit was lauded by the New York Times as seriously smart and very funny. Tickets for Venus in Fur, available at clevelandplayhouse.com or 216-241-6000.
Welcome back to the Sound of Ideas from 90.3. I'm Mike McIntyre. Coming up in the next hour on the Diane Rehm Show, 40 years ago, the Arab embargo began a long era of U.S. dependence on foreign oil. But the recent fracking boom has made the U.S. the world's largest energy producer. In December, North Dakota, Ohio, and Pennsylvania together produced 1.5 million barrels of oil per day, more than Iran exported. For this month's Environmental Outlook, Diane and a panel of experts discuss the changing global energy picture. And tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll recap what happened today on Election Day. Right now, we're talking about cybersecurity and your information. Joining me in studio this morning, Cheryl Harris, the consumer columnist at The Plain Dealer and on Cleveland.com. Greg Kelly is here too, Chief Technology Officer at Vestige. Ken Stasiak, the CEO of Secure State, and Eric Vanderburg. Is it Vanderburg or Vandenberg?
Vanderburg.
Vanderburg. Sorry if I got that wrong earlier. Eric Vanderburg is with us. He's the Director of Information Systems and Security at Jurinov. It's a computer forensics and cybersecurity firm. And an R next to a B looks like an N to somebody my age. I apologize if I've gotten that wrong. And if you'd like to join the conversation, 866-578-0903 is the way for you to do it. You can send us an email, news@wcpn.org. I mentioned that Becky in Solon has been holding, and Becky joins us now. Hi there.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to share our experience a couple years ago when we got an Xbox. To be able to play live online, you have to submit a credit card, and so we weren't going to be doing any World of Warcraft or anything like that. But my kids wanted to be able to go online with their friends and share some of the online compatible games they had. And within 24 hours, we got a call from our bank saying that they believed that there were some unauthorized purchases on our credit card, and they were. And the funny thing was they were all for the company that sells things for World of Warcraft. And they said, we've never seen you make a purchase there before. We're suspecting this is unauthorized. And they stopped it. They canceled the card. Everything was great. We had to go through the lots of fun of, letting everybody that had automatic billing through that credit card get our new number. But, we were like, okay, well, thanks for the bank for noticing it and stopping it so quickly. But then last year, we got a new Xbox, and the same exact thing happened again. Within 24 hours, it had been, that credit card had been picked up and was again purchasing things for online gaming. And they called, and even while they were on the phone verifying that we hadn't made those purchases, there were more purchases being made. So we started off with like $6, and by the time the telephone call was done and they had canceled the card, there was almost $100 on there.
Wow. Cheryl?
So I guess I would recommend, for in our case, if we ever buy another console or something like that we're going to be putting a credit card into, we're going to get one of the one-time credit card, and preload it and use it and then throw it away.
That sounds like great advice, is it, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that you should report incidents like that to the Federal Trade Commission. And yes, they do. Sometimes the fines are a little light, and it's just a promise of, well, we didn't do it and we'll never do it again. But nonetheless, I think collectively to report these things is really important. So I would file a complaint with the FTC if you see that from one source.
And what's happening there if the stuff is being used? Is it a person that's hacked that information, or is there just some confusion as to that in terms of using that credit card? How is that being accessed through the Xbox network? Does anybody have thoughts on how that's happening?
Not necessarily on the Xbox console itself, but getting back to the original thought, which is the payment brands really look at how transactions are being ran. So they're actually able to come to you as a consumer and say, hey, we believe there's fraudulent activity. I mean, that's unusual that you're getting that proactiveness. Last time your bank called you and said you had some fraudulent transactions on your account, it just doesn't happen. So they actually do a better job at protecting, obviously, because it's their information. And two, as you just alluded to, Cheryl, that if someone swipes the card, those charges are going to be reversed. Who's going to eat the charges? It's going to be the credit card company.
An email from, and thank you so much for the call, Becky, and I think Cheryl would agree, a good idea to have a one-time credit card for those types of purchases so it can't be repeatedly used. Dean sent us an email from Cleveland Heights. He says, when I worked for a local community college several years ago, the college policy was to avoid using Social Security numbers on student documents, and then all passwords and computer records ceased to use Social Security numbers in favor of a chosen password. We were told this was a security measure. Should I be concerned then that my bank requires my Social Security number as my username for online banking?
What? Yes.
Yes.
A
I guess the answer is yes,
username?
Dean.
That's a little unusual for a Social Security number to be a username. I've seen maybe an account number, but even that, it's usually you create your username is quite often your email address,
right?
Or some conglomeration of that. But yeah, because
that's just asking for it.
Yeah.
That is just asking for it. He should be concerned.
Ask him who his bank is.
Well, it's an email. Dean, if you want to shoot us another email and tell us who your bank is, we'd appreciate that information. Let's have Kristen join us now in, I don't know where Kristen's coming. Oh, calling from Charleston, West Virginia. Hello there.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call. My name is Christian, not Kristen, but here's my question. Let's say you're a small business owner and you're collecting personal, private information on your customers, so let's say financial information or even a Social Security number. You go into work on Monday morning and you find out that there's been a data breach, and you realize that all of that customer information has been stolen. It's out there. As a small business owner, what's your next 24 hours going to look like? What are you going to do?
Wow,
Greg.
I mean, you're gonna need to consult with your business advisors first of all, whether that's your outside counsel, but then you're going to need to find real quick an expert, someone that's going to come in and figure out what happened, how it happened, and where the information went. You may have reporting requirements on that information, or you may not. And there's always, too, a balance of how quickly you want to get your business up and going and close the breach versus trying to figure out what happened in order to properly stop it from happening again. But it'll be a very hectic 24 to 48 hours as you try and get your hands around the situation.
And expensive, it sounds like.
It can get expensive, but yeah, it's just the way it goes.
All right, sorry about that, Christian. Not great news. We're getting a lot of not great news on the show today. We've got an email from Karen in Lakewood. She says, are there actions that we should take for computer hygiene to discover and eliminate any potential malware? And that leads to the question, a lot of people feel like they're very safe and secure because they have some sort of firewall or some sort of antivirus protection. Often that's not enough. So what about the idea of hygiene? Let me ask you, Eric, if I've got my laptop, like Cheryl's, my MacBook Pro, and I want to find out if there's anything bad on it, what should I be doing?
Well, you can certainly use the off-the-shelf scanners, the antivirus, anti-malware tools, and I'd recommend running a couple of different scanners because they may detect 96, 98% and of the viruses out there. This is the ones that they have signatures for, and then another tool will be able to get some others. But there's still going to be new viruses and new malware out there that it can't detect, and for that, you need to just exercise safe browsing habits and to be skeptical when you receive emails, when you look at websites, when you download applications and software. Make sure you don't click those extra download bars and the bundled applications that come with it.
And tell your kids that, by the way. If you get a pop-up that says, hey, would you like this? Sure, it looks like candy. No, don't click on that thing.
Well, they just do Google search. I mean, they just go anywhere looking for information that they want. They never question what site they're
fearless.
Going to get
on everything.
No, because they don't know anything. Because it's your computer, not theirs. That's why.
Well, let me ask you. I'm just intrigued by the notion of of Chinese cyber warfare. According to a report by Taiwan's National Security Bureau, the Chinese cyber war machine continues to grow and now has about 100,000 personnel. And I know there was some thought here we need to worry about some of the more immediate things in your own personal banking and those types of things. But the notion that you have a nation that has 100,000 people whose job is to wreak this kind of havoc, I just wonder, does that keep guys like you up at night, Ken?
Oh, it does, absolutely. And one of the things that I always find interesting is we know this information, we've seen it. So is it cyber warfare? Are we getting to the point where the United States is going to classify this as an attack? Is this something that we're going to step in? Because as a small business owner, even a large business owner, if you have that much might against you, you're going to lose data. There's no doubt about it. So, how do we go about that? It's one of those industries where you hear it all the time, the deep pockets of cells of hackers that are going after information. They're state-sponsored. And when they have the resources and the government doesn't have the ethics to stop it, that's a recipe for disaster.
Well, and the U.S. does it too. I mean, what the U.S. had, the security codes for some Iranian nuclear reactor, right? So
yeah, but you could say why we're doing it. So I think we're doing it in order to protect, if you will, the nation as well as our, the world as a whole. And you can argue that. But on the flip side, is what you can't argue is when the Chinese are saying we're going to hack United States companies, take the IP, and reduplicate it in China. And that's been proven, and that's a fact. And there's no ethical bounds in China to say that you shouldn't do that in business. There's different business ethics across the pond than what's in the United States.
Also reports that Chinese hackers stole plans for the F-35 fighter as well as other weapon systems, and that certainly has got to make people feel a little uneasy. By the way, that's also the major plot point in Tom Clancy's latest novel. So it's reached the critical mass. It's in Threat Vector, the Chinese cyber warfare machine is part of that. Let's have Jim in Lorraine join us now. Hi there, Jim.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, the thing that I've been listening to with this all morning is that a lot of this seems that we're like trying to play tomorrow's game by yesterday's rules. I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I've been watching this with MP3s and photography and artwork now for years with the internet. And one of the big things is, you get these companies that try to attack companies that are illegally distributing MP3s, and once you shut them down, 5 more pop up overnight. The internet isn't going away. How we do business on the internet isn't going away. And maybe it's time that we as a Western culture start reevaluating this whole concept of mine, because the internet and the global marketing has completely changed the dynamics of how the game is played anymore. And I'll take any comments on that off air.
All right. Appreciate that. Thanks, Jim. Anyone want to respond to that or comment on it? All right. We're taking no comments off the air. Great point, though, Jim. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Have an email from let's see, who is this email from? This one is from Kate in Mentor. She says, one of my problems with consumer security is a lack of standardization of passwords. My bank won't take characters in a password. My college will only take numbers. All passwords should be 8 characters or more with capital and small letters, numbers, and characters, in Kate's opinion. We did a whole show on passwords, and the fact of the matter is you could have capital letters, you could have numbers, you could have characters. They are easily broken. All of those passwords. You think it's a little more difficult because they can't guess the name of your first pet and your mother's maiden name. But the fact of the matter is, they're pretty easy to break.
But I think that only allowing letters and having no characters and no caps or lowercase, I think that's like a really easy task.
Well, it does.
Right?
It does minimize the number of permutations for the password, and that's really what we're talking about here is brute force attacks. But just increase the numbers to 12, 15, 20. I mean, just go
and then
with
try
really
to remember
long.
those.
Well, and that's, yeah, I mean, there's applications you can get out there for free or purchase that you can store all your passwords inside.
Because I want to store all my passwords on the cloud. That's what I want to
do. Well, not in the cloud.
Like,
No, well, not in the cloud.
That's an interesting point, because we did talk about that. The password is not actually stored in a place. It essentially generates a new password every time. Is that true if I'm using a source? Because basically right now it's on a sticky note right on the screen. That's probably not good.
Yeah, you're talking about tokens and the random generating of codes on a device to allow you to get into a bank. And yeah, that is one way to have a secure system.
And Cheryl just recently wrote about the tokenization, the notion that when it's not really a credit card that's on file, it's a new randomly generated payment, basically a chit that's sent to the. I wonder if that could be one of the solutions in the future as we're talking about these financial situations. Ken?
Oh, I believe so. I mean, I think eventually we're going to have to look at solutions and architectures that the country as a whole embraces so that it's seamless for the consumer. But right now, the infrastructure is not there, unfortunately, to support some of the information techniques that we can do to secure the data.
All right, we are going to have to leave it there. Terrific conversation. We've got a number of folks that would like to join us via email, and I'm going to encourage you to send us some thoughts on our website. At the bottom of the show page today, there's a place for conversation. We'd love to continue it that way. Or I'll tell you a couple other ways you can get in touch with us as soon as I say thanks so much to each of you. Cheryl Harris, always good to have you with us.
Well, thank you.
And thank you, Greg Kelly, Ken Stasiak, and Eric Vanderburg for being with us this morning as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And if you would like to get the last word on the topic, you can give us a call, 216-916-6397. That's 916 News.